Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into becoming a lawyer after college. My guest today is Tabitha Clark. She is a lawyer, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so usually I start my guests where you went to college. So where'd you go to school?
Good old Temple University. Owls. Yeah.
Great. So let's just go back a little into your high school days. When did you start thinking about college? Was it freshman year of high school, senior year? When did it all begin for you?
Truthfully, I think it must have been about second grade. And there were some students in the class who were like, oh, I'm going to West Point, or oh, I'm going here. And I had no idea what any of those places were. So it's like time to figure it out and find out. So they know where they were going. At second grade, I felt way behind the curve.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in high school. Was Temple the only school that you looked at?
Not at all. So the way my college tour sort of went was tagging along with my older brother, who's about 2 years older than I am. So my parents, when he started looking, just made it a family vacation, family trip, and we did a little road trip, and Temple was one of the stops. And I fell in love with the campus after being there. But I applied to other schools, Rutgers, a couple of the Ivy League, some schools in New York, and Temple offered me the most bang for my buck. So
now, were your mom and dad heavily involved in looking for the schools with you?
They left it up pretty much to me, and sort of, wherever I decided to go, they supported me and said, we'll fill out the paperwork and help you along. But it was sort of left up to me to, outside from the trip, to figure out where I wanted to go.
And how did you get into, I want to be a lawyer at college? Did you just start and go right into pre-law?
Unfortunately, the idea of becoming a lawyer was sort of subliminally implanted in my head from a very young age as a child. I would ask a lot of questions. I'd run off at the mouth at every little thing. So parents, relatives, friends were like, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer. So I had sort of adopted that and said, okay, I'm going to be an attorney. And I went the typical route, which is political science. I chose that as my major, and I also double majored in Spanish because I love the language and figured it would be a useful skill to have. And yeah, from there, it just followed the process. Studied for the LSAT, got accepted into Rutgers University in Newark, and yeah.
So give us a sense of how it all works to become a lawyer when you're in college. Is it just pre-law classes? Like you said, there's tests and so on. So give us a sense of what it takes to become a lawyer when you're in college.
Fortunately, you can go to law school with any background, and the different background, the diversification of experiences and fields of study is helpful, because law touches and impacts every aspect of life, every business, major life events, transactions, whether it's real estate or art law or patent law, there doesn't have to be a set pathway to law school. And law school is one of those experiences where people go to it later in life after having worked a career or two careers, and then they decide to pursue law, whether it's for passion in immigration, or want to go into politics or legislation, or even MD, JDs, people who are going as doctor lawyers, which hats off to them. Because being one is difficult enough. But so you choose a major. I chose political science just because it felt like the typical route to go. And truthfully, I hadn't done that much investigation into it. I just sort of went with what I thought I knew, and that was sort of a default choice. But from there, you studying some of the LSATs. You take it during, I believe, the summer. And so during my last year of undergrad.
So senior year is when you start studying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I took a prep course as well.
So is that a usual trait? Is that people usually take those prep courses as part of it?
Mm-hmm. Either prep course, or you can do it on your own with certain books and literature. But I wanted to be in, take a couple practice tests, like in a test setting, and get used to the rhythm and the timing
And now,
that.
how many years does it take to become a full-fledged lawyer? Is it just the pre-law 4 years of college, and that's it, or is there years afterwards as well?
Depending on the program that you attend, because I know certain schools have now shortened it to where they'll allow you to take the bar after 2 years of law school instead of 3 years. So depending on how long it takes to do undergrad, because I was fortunate, it's one of the other reasons I chose Temple's, because not only did they provide the most funding, but they also gave me the most credit for my AP courses. So I was able to finish in 3 years as opposed to 4. And so after undergrad, most programs are 3 years, but given, I think, I want to say out in Arizona, I know a couple schools out west, they've shortened it to where after 2 years of law school, you can sit for the bar exam and become a practicing attorney.
So now, how long does the bar exam, what kind of studying do you go through? Is there like different sections? Is it like an SAT?
So the bar exam is a 2-day test where there's a full day of essays in New Jersey. It's 7 essays over 7 different areas of law. And then there's the multiple choice section, which has even more. And so you're sitting for 2 days. It is a full-time job studying for that course. I took the full summer off after graduating and prepared morning, noon, and night, going to classes, studying on my own, doing practice essays, because I was only going to take that test one time. that was it.
And you can take it multiple times?
You can take it as many times as it takes to pass. I know some of my colleagues had to take it up to 6, 7, 8 times, and they were determined.
So now essays, are they particular sections, these essays, or is it all about one particular thing in law?
So every state is a little bit different. In New Jersey, you're going to have 7 essays, and each of them is going to be on a different area of laws, like property, torts, criminal law, I want to say civil procedure. I'm not sure the other 3, but you'll know what they're going to be on. You don't know what the topics, what the actual questions will be, but you'll know that they'll hit those 7 areas. And
then they're looking at case study that you write about it. How does it work?
So it's an essay question, and you're essentially spotting the issues, doing an analysis of the law, and coming out to a conclusion on how that problem could or should work out. And
then the multiple choice section, how does that work?
Oh man, it's been so long since I've taken it on. The multiple choice section is, call it the MBE, the multiple state bar exam, and I think that's the same across the board, like every state, or most states use the MBE, but
Is it similar to like the SAT, where they give you certain words and then you have to figure out?
Truthfully, I don't remember what it was like. It went by in a blur. I was just glad to get it done. It's more specific than that. Depending on what area of law it's asking about, it can
go in either way.
Yeah.
So now, how does one go from graduating, and then your law school you said was Rutgers?
Rutgers, Newark.
Okay, so now you get to Rutgers, Newark, and what is law school about? How does that work?
Law school was a lot different than undergrad, just in the sense that you really have to enjoy reading, and most of what you're doing is the preparation before class and coming ready to discuss what you've read, break it down, spot the issues. Law school isn't so much teaching you what the actual law is, but more so how to think like an attorney and how to approach a problem, how to break it down into its components, because law isn't an exact science. There's precedents and opinions based on, it was a majority decision or a 5-4 breakdown. So while we're learning how to understand what the current state of the law is, what it was, and what it may become in the future.
And how many classes do you take in law school?
First year for most students is like sort of this core set of classes, civil procedure, criminal law, constitutional law, give you like a basis for a solid foundation in law. And then your next 2 years, you're geared more towards the electives and sort of like the specializations of what areas that you're interested in and where you might want to go in your own practice.
So do you have to know exactly what area you want to go in once you're in law school?
Not at all. Not at all. Most people end up, or at least that's what happened for myself. After graduating, my first position that I had, which was sort of like a unique program called the Rutgers Law Associates Fellowship Program. and we served low to moderate income families and individuals for about $50 an hour, which was sort of a nice, it was for people that didn't qualify for legal services, but that market rate services were just too far out of the reach for them. So they had some skin in the game. We were brand new licensed attorneys getting some practice under our belts. And so there, just sort of out of the market demand, I ended up doing a lot of family law. So divorce and child custody issues, some trust and estates work, and we got some sprinkling of other matters there, but that was the majority of my focus. And so that's why I ended up going into family practice.
So now you graduate there. How does your life take you where you are today?
So my first stop was the fellowship program. It just so happened that our year, 2014, was the inaugural year of the program. So we were the first set of fellows to, dive in and see if this was a venture that could work. Was it a successful business model? On the one hand, could we provide affordable legal services to the community? I mean, Rutgers Law School is known as the People's Electric. Like, it's a public service school. They also have clinic programs for third-year students, which give students an opportunity prior to being licensed to practice and serve the community for free. So that's one area. But so after the program was only a year long, and so because we were the first year, it sort of gave me that sense of setting up my own practice. We were figuring out the ropes. There wasn't anyone there to here's best practice or here's what you should be doing. We kind of got to set it for ourselves. What does our law firm culture and practice look like? And so after the year, it was pretty simple to do that for myself on my own. So then I went into and opened up my own solo practice in 2015. Yeah, and I practiced on my own for about 4 years, or 3.5 years.
And where do you find your clients? How does one go out and go look for clients?
All right, you hit the pavement. You're just putting yourself out there. You're networking. Most of my clientele came from referrals from friends and family and from prior clients. So the phone rings, and if it's something you can do, great. If it's not, refer it to someone else where it's their area of expertise. And one of the other things that I did was I shared space with another firm. So they sort of had overflow work or matters that they needed assistance on. So like a symbiotic relationship between a big shark and the little fishes that stick themselves to the bottom. So the big fish is swimming, and I'm helping out what I can there. So that was a big part of my practice.
And where are you today?
So now I've since merged with that firm that I share space with, and so we are the Kingston Law Group, practicing in family law, employment law, and trust and estates, and it just sort of grew, and that relationship evolved into what it is today.
So now get into the nuts and bolts of everyday lawyer. What is someone that graduates from law school? What can they expect going into a firm like yourself, or doing it themselves or something like that? What's a typical day or a week or a year? How does it work for a lawyer? Are you constantly out there knocking on doors and saying, hey, you need help?
It really depends on the type of experience that you want to have. There's a big difference between the solo and small firm experience versus the big law experience. When it comes to the solo and small firm side, you really have to know, just as much as you know the practice of law, you need to know and understand the business of law, because part of your time is delegated towards actually working on your clients' matters, and if you can, delegate that to as much support staff as you can, and the other half is towards marketing, business development, just administration and things like that. So you really have to be able to focus on both equally and delegate time to both. In a big firm experience, that's more that they have other departments that are doing that for you. And while you're bringing in business and originating your own, there's not as much of a focus, again, on the administration isn't as much your responsibility as it is in a small firm setting. So it's really a matter of preference.
So now the small firm setting, what is the type of clientele that coming in? Is it just because are the fees lower? What type of clientele do you get by a small firm?
Small firms, we get the same clientele as the big firms, and it also depends on what area you practice. So in our employment practice, we represent plaintiffs for the most part, meaning the workers, the employees, as opposed to the employers. And really, they come from all over, and the demographics of the clients are similar. We do small matters, we handle large matters, and what's great about being a small firm is sometimes we will partner up or be of counsel with another firm or another practice that has more resources than we do, and more, things can get complicated with like e-discovery and like reviewing thousands of pages of emails or so sometimes you just need a little bit more manpower.
Well, that's another thing. How does technology get involved into the law space? Because before there were books and everything was on paper and so on, and now it's more computerized. What do you see as the difference?
It's something that I've asked myself a lot lately to see, where is the practice going? Where is the profession going? Because it is gearing more towards the AI and artificial intelligence. Like they're incorporating that into, a lot of what I do is research and analytics and like understanding the case law, or, is it still valid? Has it been, modified by another ruling? And so here comes this AI technology that can look at a contract, look at a case, look at, an issue and tell me exactly what I need to know. So it's made us more efficient. It's also taken law and put it into the hands of the consumer more directly. There are a lot of services out there like LegalZoom. I know Harvard's recently come out with something that allows you to create your own will online. And while I want to say that these things are still in their infancy, and so I would encourage people to approach with caution.
Yeah.
It's a complex area, and while it's fascinating to see all that AI can do, it's not perfect, and that legal eye and that human component is still very important.
That's true. So they come to you, they give you a case of some sort. What field are you in?
So I'm primarily in trust and estates and other transactional work. So I do some real estate, some business sales and purchases, but primarily I went from, divorcing families and dismantling them to helping families plan for the future and make decisions for the future that allow them to enjoy the present, meaning putting in place powers of attorneys, wills, or trusts if they're appropriate, and planning for their family legacy.
So what type of families are coming to you then?
All types. There could be single individuals. Certain people are coming because they've just gotten divorced and so they need to redo their documents, or they're recently widowed. I even have couples who aren't married, and so they want to make sure that they've put the documents in place that give their significant other the rights that someone would otherwise have by default were they legally married. So they are in all walks of life from age 18 up to 72.
Wow. So now, do you ever go to court for something like this, or is this basically just paperwork?
For the most part, if the planning's done right and it's done well, you shouldn't have to go to court. But sometimes, I get the families after the fact, someone's passed, and they either can't find the will, or there's disputes over the will, or there's some sort of contention. And depending on where the matter goes, you may have to go to circuit court and have the court come down on an issue and say, this is a valid will, or, that perhaps the executor or some other fiduciary has been absconding with some of the funds inappropriately, and so we'll have to chase him down. So it could still end up in court. But.
So now, is that a different type of lawyer that sits in front of a judge and talks to the judge and the jury and so on and so forth? Is that a different type of lawyer than a lawyer that's handling corporate paperwork of some sort?
Litigation is absolutely it's a skill and a skill set that not every attorney has, right? You got to enjoy being in front of an audience, being able to deliver information persuasively and poignantly. And I've seen a lot of skilled litigators do it, and I'm working on those skills myself, but I wouldn't put myself up there just quite yet. But in-house counsel, someone who works for a company, just sort of doing more compliance work and ensuring that HR is on the up and up, and that they're in compliance, whether with the SEC or other guidelines. It's a different experience than.
So now, are there other lawyers in your group that are handling the employment law and things of that sort?
Yep. So I have two other partners that I work with, and while they focus primarily on one on family and the other on employment, we assist each other on our work and sort of cross-reference.
So now, if someone comes and they get into an accident of some sort and they come to you, you don't do that type of law? Do you still handle that person, or do you refer them to someone else?
Depends on the case. We while those are our three primary areas, trust and estates, family law, and employment, we will do some work in whether it's personal injury or municipal like work, some criminal matters, if it's something that's within our capabilities. But if it's, like I said, more complex or just needs more resources or just is far outside of our area of expertise, like we don't do any workers' compensation. There's certain cases that we just won't touch. But if we can handle it, we'll do it. If not.
Now, what a big law firm, what is that like? Did you ever have that kind of experience even in school? Do you intern at something like that?
So all of my experiences during law school were with small firms, whether it was either 1 or 2 attorneys or max 4 or 5. So I didn't have that big law experience. I'd just seen too many and heard too many stories about, the 2,000 billable hours and the late nights and the weekends and it seemed like if I was going to be working that hard, I wanted to do it for myself as opposed to for someone else. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, internships. How does that work with a law firm?
My intern's here in the office today, and her story is very interesting. She messaged me on LinkedIn, said that we went to the same high school, we met for coffee, and before I know it, she's got her business card slid across the table and a resume and I'd like an internship. And that's pretty much how it goes. I did the same thing, contacted attorneys that I either had a personal relationship with or that someone I knew had a personal relationship with and saw if there were any opportunities available. So I ended up working for a small firm in Dover, and then another summer I was with the public defender's office in Morris County.
Now, do most people that do internships, do they start in pre-law in undergrad school, or do they start once they get into law school?
It really can vary. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about going to law school to intern with a law office to see what the day-to-day work can be like. Because while there are exciting times and we're on a deadline, we're in a crunch, whether for trial or a motion or to get things filed in time, other times it's not that exciting. It's just you're reading, you're doing the paperwork, you're answering calls, and most of it is keeping in touch and keeping lines of communication open with your clients and managing their expectations. Mm-hmm.
Now, when did you start? Did you start undergrad, or did you start when you were in
You mean interning?
Yeah.
I started in law school after I'd already gotten in and said, okay, I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, now let me see what this is about. Let me go and shadow someone for a little bit. And yeah.
So now, once you're in law school and you're doing internships, is that pretty much what you're doing? Is you're just shadowing another lawyer to different cases and researching, and majority of the time, is it research?
Yeah, you're doing whatever it is they need you to do. So a lot of times it's research because there's only so much that you can do. Some of it's drafting whether it's certifications like client statements or putting together a legal brief or a memo, summarizing your research, putting it together.
Now, in high school, do you ever see any colleges coming with pre-law information in high school or anything like that, or is it just pretty much general about just colleges themselves?
It was pretty general. I wasn't aware at the time of any programs that were that there was even a possibility of doing a joint program, meaning like taking law school courses while you're in undergrad and sort of getting those under your belt before even being accepted to a law school. Like those options, if you're not looking for them actively, you might not find out about them. So I encourage anyone considering law school to see what paths there are to get there.
And do you recommend visiting the schools, even though it's pre-law, visiting the colleges and making sure that's the right fit for them?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's certain things that you're not going to understand unless you go and visit and are in the space. My brother had the experience of choosing an undergrad school without having actually visited it, and he was only there for a year. He ended up transferring out and going somewhere else. So the environment that you're learning in is important to feel comfortable, to feel like that it's and that it's going to provide you with the educational experience that suits you.
Yeah, so it's great. So we're coming to the end of our show.
way.
And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there and their sons and daughters that are thinking about pre-law, going to college for law? What advice do you want to give to those people?
Absolutely go and shadow someone who's in the area that you're practicing in. Like, I think that's really important to get a feel for what the day-to-day experience looks like, and to experience both the small firm and the big firm if you can. The other piece is, yes, focus on what you're doing to get to law school, but also really develop and experience your undergrad experience in and of it for itself. Like, don't do what I did, which is just take poli-sci, because everybody takes poli-sci. Like, if I could go back, I probably would have majored in music and still gone to law school. So, yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Till next time.